We talk about euphemisms, trying to compare and see if they're the same in London or not. Do they say put your foot in it? And
No, we do.
oh, okay.
I'm Lo Harris, and you're tuning into One-on-One with Lo, where I bring in folks from various creative communities to engage in uplifting conversations around how we can show up in our work as our authentic selves. Enjoy the conversation.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
So well. I'm loving the cuteness of the hair.
Thank you.
I can't believe I'm seeing you again. What a treat.
I had such a good time seeing you. I'm so sorry. My stomach was just all doing cartwheels.
I really felt you, but also we all totally fell in love with you.
You have such a wonderful family, and I'm so happy that you are sharing your time with me today. I know that you are a busy lady, and I respect your time 1,000%. So I want to ask you good questions today.
I know you will. You're not going to ask me anything that, isn't highly intelligent.
Well, for those of you who don't know, because I feel like we're just in on an inside joke and not letting anyone who's watching in, I want to introduce my guest. This is Rene, aka Lisou London on Instagram, Rene Macdonald. Rene is the founder and creative director of Lazoo, which is a British women's wear fashion company based in London. Rene is talented, she's bold, she's creative, and she's really a powerhouse in her career and a really great model for showing that it's never too late to chase your dreams. Her striking colors and her lovely silhouettes have been worn by many celebrities such as Sandra Oh, Olivia Munn, Rita Ora, Emma Roberts, and so many more people. And her inspiring entrepreneur journey really began with the encouragement from her two sons, which we're going to be getting into that because I think that's a really cool story. And I just want to say before we start, congratulations, Rene, on all of your successes. I'm so proud to see how far your line has come. I've been following you since you've been following me. We found each other on Instagram, and I was like, I like your clothes. And you're like, I like your art. And then we decided, let's follow each other. And then we finally got to meet in person. So it's like a pandemic fairy tale.
And you were even all fabulous.
Thank you so much. I'm just so happy that you're here with me today. And to get started, I want to kind of open the floor to you and start with this question. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about what role fashion has played in your life thus far and what goes into your work. Because I know that your mom played a huge role in introducing you to fashion and driving your creative process for Lazoo pieces. So can you give everyone the lay of the land for those who aren't familiar with your work?
So basically my sort of, for want of a better word, journey in fashion began when I was a child. And my mum was a major fashionista, loved clothes, so, apple tree. And then I came along and was as obsessed as my mum, loved it. When everybody else had posters of their favourite band or their favourite film star, I just had cutouts from magazines on my walls, just because I loved clothes. So from that kind of came this, it just became really important to me how clothes make you feel. And I know for me, if I don't feel, on top form and I can wear something that cheers me up, immediately it just gives me a bit of confidence. And I know for some people, how it's if I wear nice underwear, I feel great. No, maybe you feel better. So for me, it's just, if I wear something that makes me feel happy, I feel better. And colour always does that for me. I'm from Tanzania in East Africa, and there is literally no high street across the continent that is muted. Everybody wears colour, men, women, there's no kind of rule. We do pattern clash, we do print clash, we do everything clash, there's no kind of can't wear pink or women can't wear, all of that. So because I was raised in that environment and the backdrop of Africa, which is already in itself very colourful, I kind of started a brand thinking I want to merge of those two things, my African heritage, but also I've grown up living in the West, so giving it a Western aesthetic, if you like, in terms of silhouettes and shapes. Crazy.
No, but the thing is that I love about your work particularly is that you're not shying away from like the Africanness, right? And I think that in a lot of ways you're kind of challenging the politics of color. Like I think there's this idea that you know, muted tones, black and white, that's what elegance looks like. And I think that that's like a very colonial idea. And then I also think that like people have certain ideas about like what color in Africa looks like, and they immediately defer to like the kente cloth, you know what I mean? Like across the diaspora, but that's not true. There are so many like Black people exist wearing so many different garbs and so many different colors. And I think that you not shying away from like the Africanness is like integral, because it really kind of, it's like in direct contrast to like how we talk about color in fashion, how I talk about color with regards to like heritage. And it really is it breaks those stereotypes, which I think is so fantastic.
Well, I'm really glad that that's what you get from it, because a lot of it for me, sort of my relationship with fashion was quite challenging for various reasons. Firstly, kind of, you know, when I was looking at magazines and looking at imagery when I was younger, I didn't see models who looked like me. I didn't see people in magazines who looked like me. And if they were darker, they were like very, very light, rather, you know, there was no dark Black girls. So what I was saying about, you know, when I would tear imagery out of magazines and stick it on my wall, I would always chop the head off. I chopped the head off because otherwise I couldn't visualize what that would look like on me. And I wasn't represented anywhere in these magazines. And even now, there are a lot of magazines that I look at where when I get to the beauty section, I just miss the whole lot out because there's not going to be anything relevant for me there. And that's one thing that is really good, and it's positive that it's changing, but it's kind of still not enough.
There's still a lot of work to be done, but it's like, yeah, I mean, seeing like you yourself are an active revolution by existing and creating the pieces that you create, using the models that you use, like creating the vision that you're creating. And I think you're doing important work, important cultural work. And I would like to start talking about the inception of Lazoo. I think that conversation is important because, you know, you decided to take this leap of faith, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, fairly recently, right? Could you share the scene with our viewers?
So I had really, there's no judgment involved in this whatsoever. Everyone needs to parent the way they need to parent. But I knew that when my children were young, I really, really wanted to be present with them. I didn't want to miss a single second. So it was all about them for years. And obviously I did do little bits of work here and there, but always kind of without their knowledge. So I didn't really want them to know that I had anything else going on in my life apart from them. I think they were in their late teens at the time, and my son we were on holiday, having a lovely time, and having a drink, watching the sun go down, and my son turns to me and says, Mama, and I said, yes. He said, you're a hypocrite, you know. Well, or, okay. Sharp intake of breath from me as I was like, whoa, where are we going with this then? Because as you know, respect is a big thing for me, so you can't talk to your mama like that. And I was like, okay, you know, what do you mean? Explain yourself. And he said, well, you've spent all your life telling us to follow our dreams, and you're the only one in the family who hasn't done that. And even now saying it takes my breath away. I slightly feel quite emotional about that. And so I kind of looked at him and I was like, wow, who made you so wise? And he said, you know, you've always wanted to have your own brand, start your own company, and you just haven't done it. You just keep talking about it. And we are now older, we're grown up, we understand that it's your time and we will support you 100%. And then we sort of had this little family meeting and I was like, you do realize these are the things that will change. I will always be available, but there will be times I can't talk or I can't cook or I can't, you know, do the other mum things. So it was just, you know, the most beautiful gift to be given by my own children, saying, actually, thank you for everything you've done for us. Now go and do you.
That's so beautiful. And I feel like that speaks to the maturity of your sons. And then I think that I really like kind of like the family dynamic in that, because it feels like you all are such a cohesive unit. Like you're having like this family roundtable where you're like laying out negotiations and like there is clarity in terms of like, hey, like I am going to be working You know what I mean? And like, you know, this is what it was in the past. This is like what it could potentially look like. And you're like creating these like boundaries and these expectations that can, you know, still like maintain like a healthy relationship between you and your family. And I think that that's like really cool, like household planning. That's like really smart. I will be borrowing that for the far, far future.
As it is for all women and for anybody who is, you know, has a family, but because of course you still don't want to drop any balls. I still want to be able to do everything. But what's great is that every now and again when I'm trying to do a million and one things, either my husband or one of my sons will kind of go, just take a deep breath and just relax. You don't have to do it all. But it's lovely to be given that as a gift, because really it's saying not just we appreciate what you've done, but we see what you've done for us. We see the sacrifices that you've made. And I say sacrifice, it was no sacrifice to me. That was my choice, and I adore being a mother and a wife and creating a home and a safe, stable environment. But there's also another part of me that wanted to, you know, do something just for me. Because I think as women as well, what's often complicated is that, you know, especially as Black women, because of the traditions we have and the culture we come from, you know, you are somebody's daughter first, then you're somebody's wife, then you're somebody's mother. And there are moments where you can feel like, hang on, when do I get to just be me?
Yeah. We give a lot. We give so much. Oh, I'm glad that you've been able to give to yourself. And I know that giving to yourself isn't always an easy process, you know, like it wasn't just that your son said, go be free, mom. And then you like overnight, you know, created this empire. You know, I'm sure that there were moments of doubt. And I'd love for you to share, you know, with the listeners, you know, what doubts you've had while starting out, and how did you go about disarming those doubts?
I think the biggest thing goes back to being told that I was being a hypocrite. So every time I felt I've had a doubt, I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen? What would I say to my boys if they were feeling doubt right now? I always say to them, just get on with it, do it. What's the worst that can happen? When I say what's the worst that can happen is, isn't it better to try something and fail than to regret it and never know what would have happened either way? Because it might work out. So, and we only have the one life, so you've got to just go for it, be passionate about what you're doing, believe in what you're doing, and also just be authentic in what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth addressing, you know, once you take a giant leap, every risk after that you take is like, so like, why not? Like, you know, like when I quit my job, you know, because I was very risk averse. I had a very like scarcity mindset when it came to my career. I always felt like I couldn't say no to anybody. I always needed to put myself in a position of being able to kind of like, if I go out on my own, I can still crawl up under this entity and still be taken care of if it messes up. And once I kind of pushed that entity aside and said, I'm just out here in the desert, and when it's like you're on like creatively intellectual survivor, like literally you're gonna do anything to survive, and you just gotta do what you gotta do. You're in complete fight mode, because you've already made this big commitment. You already made this big decision, and like if you fail, at least you learn something from it. But there's nothing that says that because you fail, then you have to go back to A, B, and C. You might need to pivot, and you might need to find ways to, you know, MacGyver it, you know, and put yourself back in the position to strike again. But it doesn't mean that you have to go home, you know, just because you feel like you don't have any more chips.
Because everything you do, whether you succeed or fail at it, you're learning something different. You're meeting new people. So everything is providing another potential opportunity. So there isn't really a failing, I don't think. So it's a bit like if you apply for a job and you don't get the job, and then you apply for another one, you don't get that job, and it keeps going like this, and maybe you get turned down for sort of 20 jobs, let's say, and you start to really lose confidence, and you think, oh my God, no one's ever going to hire me, and then something happens. Well, when that thing happens, it wouldn't have happened had you not lost the 20 jobs.
Exactly. It all feeds into each other. They're not isolated events. Like, it's all additive.
Totally. And it's just that. It's just reminding yourself of that. So I always say to people, you know, starting your own business is a little bit like jumping off a very tall building and not knowing whether anyone's going to catch you. You know, and it's that's the, you know, that's the level of fear you feel. You're just like, oh my God, what if? And then you're just like, okay, I'm just going to jump.
But then when you get that leverage, oh, there's nothing sweeter. Like, there's nothing sweeter, because then you can start being strategic, and then you I was sitting, you know, I like have the best assistant in the world, and I was like talking with her today. I just came up with like brand pillars, like philosophies, and I'm like, yeah, these are my philosophies. After like doing all of this work and doing it so aimlessly and not having an idea of like how I could talk about the work, and then finally kind of looking at it, standing back and saying like, oh yeah, these are the pillars that I subscribe to in the work that I do. And that's like a form of leverage to me. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't have taken that leap, hadn't gone through the process of doing projects that didn't necessarily fit me, or like, you know, saying yes to things that I probably could have said no to. You know, you have to make those mistakes. You have to go through that process in order to really have that clarity and to have that vision. And another part of nourishing that vision actually coincides with nourishing your team, because it's, you know, from our conversations, it's clear to me that in your practice, people are really, really important. People. And you've mentioned previously that the boss eats last. Can you elaborate on this and explain this phrase to the audience some more?
So my thing is that I could not do what I do if it wasn't for my amazing team. And they are honestly off the scale. I am one of the luckiest people ever. They work really hard. They believe in the same vision. You know, they understand what we're, you know, the direction we're all going in and what we're trying to achieve. Basically, the culture of your company starts from the top. So I've got to be as human as I can be and as real as I can be with my team, and listen to them and so we sit in a studio where it is all open plan. I don't have my own office or anything. If somebody wants to talk, in fact, I think our most junior member of the team sits opposite me. We all chit chat all day long. And I love that sense of, it's not about hierarchy, it's not about X is more important than Y, because every single person is a component of the success of that company. Mm-hmm. So take one piece away and it doesn't work. But the most important thing is for me to look after my team so that they can help me. And that doesn't just mean that, you know, that means looking after them, obviously, in the sense that, yes, they're paid, etc., but also looking after them emotionally. You know, understanding that, yeah, you know, you are people too. I see the people I work with more than I see anybody else. So why would I not want to get on with you? Why would I not want to have a laugh with you? Why would I not want your life to be wonderful and happy as well? Because the happier you are, the more happiness you'll bring, the better work you'll do, the happier we'll all be.
Exactly.
So I'm a really big believer in that. And I always say, you know, just communicate with me. Tell me what, I can't read your mind. If you're having a bad day, just come and say, Rene, I'm having a bad day today. And then I can work with that. You know, whereas if you come in and you're just moody, I have no idea what's going on. But in terms of eating last, I just think, you know, the most important thing is my team. And I have to be the last priority in that list of people. And they have to feel that I put them first too. Because I want the best out of them. I want them to love their job. Of course, not everybody loves 100% of their job. But if we can get to 80% happiness, I'm happy.
That's a good threshold. No, I absolutely cannot understate, like, especially, and I'm speaking as like a young person who started their career in an industry that is very much based on hierarchy. You know what I mean? Like, PAs aren't always treated right. You know, interns aren't always treated right in news. Like, anchors get preferential treatment. You know, like, it's a very hierarchical industry that I came from. And I can't understate the difference it makes when you have a good boss. Because in my short time working for other people, I've had outstanding, impeccable bosses. And I've had bosses who have created almost dehumanizing experiences for me for really no reason.
Which environment makes you enjoy your job more and makes you work?
Exactly. Do I want to show up as my best self for, like, you know, the executive producer who couldn't give me a desk to sit in and I was sitting on the floor making graphics?
Yeah.
No, I don't care about you making your boss happy if you can't even get me a chair to sit in? You know, do I care about the boss who went out of their way to introduce me to like an art director to work on, you know what I mean? Because I was interested in graphics as an intern, and they made sure that I had a relationship with the art director and I was able to make things. Like, yes, love that boss. Wonderful boss. Like, I want to give you the moon.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and the stars.
That is part of your job, is you want the people in your team to grow. You know, one of my team members, in fact, who just left because after setting all this up, because I'm so bad at technology, has been with me since the very, very beginning. And she started as my intern. And to have watched her grow has been such a beautiful thing, you know. And then to also feel like I've played a part in that. I've played a part in making someone who was really quite shy and is now leading meetings and taking over whole projects. And, you know, that makes me proud.
And they have so much to offer as individuals as well. You know, I believe in deference to expertise, and that's how I approach any collaborative project I take on. Like, when I hire someone to edit a video for me or to help me shoot something, they're not working for me. Like, we are working together. And if there's something that they want to try, I defer to their expertise, because they're bringing something to the table that clearly I do not have, which is why they are here joining me at the table, so that we can figure out how to make something that will feed us both. Like, we're cooking together. And it's clear to me that your team is the lifeblood of your operation and essentially a family. And that makes a huge difference. And just as you said, especially for someone who might have been shy or is just starting out in the industry, because it's folks like that, it's bosses like that, it's working partners like that, that really empower a person to feel like they have a voice.
Yeah.
And when everyone feels like they have a voice, then you get a much better product, you get a much better organization, you get a much better collaboration, because everyone's trying to put their foot in it. Now, I do have a question. This is maybe more of an industry question, and it relates to like what you were saying. You know, how do you think your kindness-oriented working style compares to typical attitudes in the fashion industry? Because I think many people's first inclination or perception is to think that the fashion industry can be pretty intimidating or unfriendly. So I'm curious to know if, in your experience, if like maybe we're misconceiving what it looks like to work in fashion. You know, what is your take on that?
I mean, I can't comment on what it's like for other people, because obviously I came into it and started my own business. So I haven't worked for another fashion brand to be able to know it's like this or it's like that. And obviously you hear stories about, you know, but I guess the stories you hear are always the nightmares, you know, so it can't always, it's not like that everywhere, clearly. And there must be lovely bosses as well as hideous. I mean, you know, when you watch a film like The Devil Wears Prada, yeah, you know, everyone in fashion is like insane. We're all monsters. But what I would say from my point of view is that what I find helpful in terms of the way I run a business is being a woman and also being a mother. So the way that I view my team members is like my children. And in fact, it's really funny because they actually call me office mama. Like, I'm very much like, you know, are you getting home safely? And what's going on here? And how was that date you went on last week? Is he a nice boy? So I think for me, it comes more from that side than it maybe being a typical fashion thing. I suspect if you're working in a very large corporate organization, then yes, there's probably the potential for more difficulty. But we're a small team, so we all know each other really, really well. And if there was any kind of awkwardness or nastiness, or someone wasn't very happy, or someone wasn't behaving very well, I can just nip that in the bud real quick.
Yeah, you can get it right at the root. Oh, so would you have any advice, like concrete advice for a small business who is looking to scale or build a team around their creative vision?
I would say literally pick the best people that you can to surround yourself with. And when I say the best people, I don't necessarily mean the most qualified people. I mean, of course, you will need people who have experience in the industry that you're in, because there'll be lots of things you don't know. So where you have areas where you're not really sure, then yes, you know, of course, ask industry experts. But I think it's mainly finding people that you connect with. Because if you find a person you can connect with and they appeal to you, the thing I always say is, I can teach you any skill, I can't teach you a personality. And I'm going to have to sit opposite you. So I need to look at a face that's smiling and has a personality. The rest we can kind of work on.
That really resonates with, I think, like the piece of advice that I got in one of my college internships that has stuck with me forever, is be a pleasure to work with. Because if you could be the best video editor, the best fashion designer, the best artist, but if you're an asshole, and I say that with a capital A,
I can't help
then
with that.
I don't want to work with you. No one wants to work with you. I mean, you could be so good at what you do, but if people kind of like, you know, when your name is brought up, or they're kind of feeling some trepidation about going to ask you, you know, for your opinion on something, and they just do not derive any form of pleasure from talking to you in any capacity, like that's your reputation is going to precede you in the worst way possible. So being a pleasure to work with, being empathetic, you know, being firm, like don't let people run all over you, because there's a difference. I think people think being nice means, you know, being disrespected all day and smiling. No, but be a pleasure to work with.
Come with your A game, be prepared to work hard. You know, I used to work as a stylist, and that means every job was with a different crew for me. I'm not going to turn up at a job and say, oh, you know, my child's not well, or this is, because that's not what they're paying me to do. That's not their problem. My job is to turn up and do the best job I can, make everybody feel comfortable, you know, and be personable, because then I'll get hired again. No one's going to rehire me if I've just moaned all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, we have bad days. I'm not saying every day is perfect, but to the best of your ability. So when I really, really see that is when we do shoots, you know, and you've got like maybe 2 models. It's a very small, tight team, maximum, say, 10 people. It is critical that everyone is on their A game. You have 1 day to shoot a campaign. One person's moodiness or one person's bad attitude, it literally just sours everything. And in turn, that affects the end result. So all of our shoots is like loud music, lots of discoing. I dance around like a moron. But it's really just like getting the energy, keeping energy levels up and keeping everybody happy and making sure that, you know, everyone has what they need to bring their A game. Because then when you get the final product and you see the campaign shots, you're like, yes, nailed it.
Period. My next topic of conversation is all about what it means to cultivate greater communities. So we're still in like the people section, you know. I'm super interested in discussing ideas around what it means to find your people, because community building is everything. It's everything. And I'm always surprised at how I meet people and how I meet some of my favorite creative, you know, contemporaries like yourself, right? And how we provide support for one another. So I want to ask you, what does it mean for you to find your people?
Well, I'm very, very much a believer in community anyway. And I think it's meeting like-minded people, meeting people you can collaborate with, but I also think it's about a much, much bigger picture than that, which is raising up other people and inspiring other people and helping other people. For me, having a brand is not just about, oh my God, I want to make loads of money and be really rich. It's about what can I do with that platform when I reach success, whatever you deem success to be. You know, we've done like school competitions to encourage children to be more creative. I mean, there are lots of, you know, I don't want to kind of be like, oh, I've done this and I've done that, but there are lots of initiatives that you can begin that help other people along the way as well. Because especially for us, you know, culturally for me as a Black girl, saying I wanted to go into design, saying I wanted to go into fashion, that was just like not even on the radar with my parents. You know, I had to go the traditional academic route. And that's why this came much, much later in my life. I think it's really important for younger girls or younger people who look like me to see me and go, that could be me. I could be doing that thing. So that's a big part of community for me. And also just, it's where you live. You know, it's essential to connect with where you live and to build on that community beyond where you live as well.
This kind of touches a bit on, you know, the next question that I had. And I'm thinking back to what you were saying at the beginning of the live about you wouldn't see yourself in these magazines. You would literally cut the heads off the models so that you could at least picture the outfit and what it could look like on you. You know, being like a Black woman in the UK fashion scene, what has your experience been meeting other peers, you know, other Black peers, you know, who can share and empowering and pouring into one another? Have you met anybody or like found any contemporaries that you've had fellowship with yet? What does that look like for you?
I mean, I would say sort of in terms of Black designers, we don't have as many, and certainly not as many female Black designers, because there's a smaller Black demographic in the UK compared to the US. Of course, yes, there are designers I know who are other Black women, and we are all really supportive of each other, but we are kind of almost the starting point. There aren't that many people for us to look up to and go, oh, 10 years ago so-and-so did this, or 20 years ago so-and-so did that. So I think that's where it becomes really important to not shut the door behind you.
And have you had like any mentors at all throughout like your process that like, you know, or other ways that, are you a mentor to someone else like actively? Like what does mentorship look like in your practice?
We do several initiatives where I mentor. One is with a platform called Fashmash, and they do a Young Pioneers program. So you sign up and you say what you could help somebody with, and then they get sent along to you and they intern, and you just teach them as much as you can over a short period of time. And then we also do our own internships. So we've had students come while they're studying, and actually for them, being in a small company, I think is really helpful, because instead of being like, you're in one department, we're all in the same room. So I'm like, okay, when you get bored with me, go and talk to, you know, Annie over there, or go and talk to Alice and find out what she does. I think that is really, really essential, because then it makes it much easier for them to say, oh, I don't like what she does, but I quite like what she does. And then you know, or you might go, actually, fashion's not for me. I don't like any of it. In terms of mentoring for me personally, I mean, my mum is the closest person I have of a Black woman that inspired me to do what I'm doing now.
So where did you get the name Lazoo? I'm trying to prime that.
I see where you're going. I see you. So it was my childhood nickname. My mum made it up, actually. And because by the time I started my business, my mother had already passed away, I really wanted to honor her. And a big part of the brand is, it's an homage to her, because everything I know about fashion and about an awful lot of things is because of her, because she was awesome. And in fact, on my desk is a picture of my mum that I look at every single day.
And you were saying over dinner too that sometimes when you're, you know, coming up with new silhouettes, you know, it comes to you as if your mom literally dropped the design on your table.
Honestly, I know it sounds crazy, people. I'm not sort of a fanciful person, particularly in that respect, but it does literally sometimes feel like that. You know, I will see an entire collection in my head, or I will see a particular print or a theme. And then, you know, it happens. And for instance, actually a really good example of that was 2019, pre-pandemic. I designed my Spring/Summer 20 collection, and it was called Rainbow Supernova. And it was very, you know, heavily influenced by rainbow colors and very joyous. And then obviously we got into 2020, the collection was released, and the pandemic hit. And the emblem for the national healthcare, which is our sort of free healthcare system in the UK, was a rainbow. And everyone said, how did you know? And I was like, I did, like, obviously I didn't know there was going to be.
That's divine.
Because, you know, if I'd known that, I'd have planned a bit better. But it was little spooky things like that happen. And then you're just like, oh, how did I, you know, like, where did that even come from? So everything then was about rainbows, and I was like, hey, I landed on my feet here. I've just done a full rainbow collection. So sometimes when things like that happen, I sort of feel like she's on my shoulder.
We love like a little like shoulder mom. Another question I had, you know, and this is mostly for in case there are any aspiring designers who are listening to this today or who are going to look back at this. Is there any advice that you have for Black designers who are looking to start their own label?
Don't expect it to be easy. Expect to have to work, as my mum used to always say to me, 110% harder than everybody else. And I grew up very much with a mum who, across the board, not just being a designer, anything, I think probably more so if you're a creative actually, because you may be fighting against the cultural backdrop of your parents just wanting you to have job security.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody has to become Beyonce, somebody has to become Basquiat, somebody has, you know, do you know what I mean? Like none of those people were born they were born just regular people. And then they pursued their dreams and they worked really, really, really hard. And, you know, obviously you have to have some talent. But my mum used to always say to me, you're a Black woman, you'll always have to work 110% harder than your counterparts. And then being a woman is another layer on top. I think in a way that can be a real blessing because you enter a room not expecting things to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
I get less disappointed, I think, than my white counterparts when I talk to girlfriends, you know, who are running their own businesses, who are white, who will have been told all their lives they can do anything. So no, they're like, oh my God, what do you mean no? Whereas I'm in the room going, it's going to be tough. They're going to say no. But, you know, here we go. Then when I get a no, I'm kind of like, standard. But it kind of gives me the impetus to drive harder.
Yeah.
Because then I think, no, I'll show you. You know, watch this space. You are not going to crush me. Whereas, and then if it's a surprise and I get a yes, I'm like, whoa, who knew?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that can be said for, I ditto that for folks who are looking for art as well. It's not always easy. And like, I used to feel like I was an underdog. I used to think, oh, like, I'm the underdog. But I was never the underdog. I was always the dark horse, okay? Because I'd come into a room and people would kind of like look at me like, oh, okay, you know, whatever, you know, whether it was in my internships or in like my early career, they wouldn't suspect anything. And then all of a sudden I bust out all these skills, or I like bust out this project, or I like come with, like, I just come on my A game and I'm just doing my own thing, and I'm enterprising as well. So I'm not just focused on doing other people's work, but I'm making up my own projects for myself because I want to have something that looks good for me. And when I'm, you know, when I'm that way, by the time they realize, oh my God, who is that? I'm already out the door.
Yeah, you're already like that.
I'm already on to the next thing. So being like, you know what I mean, understanding that it's not easy, and that energy in me was fueled by being told no, being told like, no, you have to wait. No, like you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you have the look to be on camera. You should try not to upset this person. You should just keep your mouth shut. You should make these people happy. I don't like no.
And I don't like impossible. Almost the minute you say something's impossible, I'm like, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to work on it until I figure this thing out. So I think it is that. It's just, you have to just take on board. It's not going to be easy. Don't give up. Keep working really hard. And also don't, like, focus on yourself and what you're doing. Don't let other people drag you down. Don't waste time going, so-and-so's doing this, so, oh, why am I not doing that? Why? No. Let them do them. Don't waste that energy worrying about them. Worry about where you're going and what your journey is and what you want to achieve. And I think if you can do all those things, then you're kind of almost halfway there. It's just attitude and mindset, I think. That's the thing. And I think also, you know, it's really easy for people to think, you know, you're just skipping along and then all of a sudden amazing things happen.
No, it's opportunity, meeting preparation, like the way that like my own career happened. I mean, I had this career working and doing animation. I understood, like, you know, what looked good in design from my previous career. I spent my entire childhood and high school hood, you know, drawing and trying to be a better drawer. I met the right person who was like, oh, like, this is an iPad. Have you tried it? And then I tried it. And then everything in 2020 happened, which no one could have predicted. And all of those things together, you know, had I not, you know, had that experience working in news, had I not had that experience like drawing a lot, had I not, you know, had this not been 2020, you know what I mean? It wouldn't have, it has to be a perfect concoction. And like the only thing that you can do is control what you're doing with your time and how you're enriching your skills.
Yeah. Because I get asked as well that other question is people say, oh, you know, what do you think of what this designer's doing, or what are the designers that are your contemporaries do you rate? And I'm always like, I don't have time to look at what anyone else is doing. I'm way too busy just doing me. Because I think that's then when the danger starts, is when you start comparing, or you start little things. Like at the beginning, I can remember people saying to me, but what if it fails? And I was like, well, if it fails, it fails. I mean, at least I'll know. At least I won't be on my deathbed going, I wonder if, or I should have, or I could have. We only get the one go. So you just have to get on with it and do what you need to do, but appreciate that it's not going to be easy, and you will work really, really hard, day and night, 365 days a year. That, like, even when you're asleep, your mind is working on things. So it has to be this thing that you feel you have to do. It has to be all. Literally, your life won't be the same if you don't pursue this. It's not a life job.
Being an artist keeps me from being completely insane.
No clock off time. So like, you know, like you, I will work on holiday, I will work when I travel. There's no kind of day. I'm trying to think actually. No, there really is no day where there isn't time where I'm spending thinking about something, or looking at a landscape and suddenly going, oh my God, that's inspired this print. Let me quickly jot that down. Let me quickly write this idea down. But because it's my passion, just as yours is yours, you don't resent doing it. It doesn't feel like your job.
It's just how I live my life. It's as natural as scooping my cat's litter box and getting a coffee. Like, it just happens. And I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna go make a brand deck, or, you know, whatever. What has been your all-time favorite project to work on?
Oh, I mean, within the brand, what's been my all-time favorite?
Just like in your creative life, like, oh, you can open it up.
Well, I mean, you know, the corny one, the most obvious, is my children. And they would roll their eyes and you've met them, so I'm like, yeah, I'm still working on you. So, I mean, my favorite thing has been starting and establishing a brand. That is probably, in terms of career, the thing I'm most proud of. And, you know, let's hope it doesn't, but even if it were to end tomorrow, I would still die with a smile on my face.
So there's this broadcaster named Ira Glass, and they have this famous quote that talks, it's kind of specific to art, but I kind of imagine that I feel like a fashion designer could maybe connect to this, about how when you're first starting out, you have like taste, like you have a vision in your head and you know it looks good, but like there's an incongruency between the vision you have in your head and the ability you have, you know, in your skills and in your hands and in your technology to actually execute those ideas in your head. So my question for you is, was there a particular moment when you realized that you had the skills to execute the ideas you had in your head for Lazoo?
Yes, when I discovered that I could draw on other people's expertise. I think it's so important to know your own limitations and to kind of, I'm not formally trained, so I didn't go to school to learn design. I don't have a degree in, you know, fashion design, pattern cutting, any of that. My mum taught me, and basically I'm self-taught. So there have been a lot of things where, you know, I have a vision of what I want to make. I know how it is, but I maybe don't necessarily know how to get from this vision to the final product. So really it's about learning that when there are stages that are difficult, it's finding somebody who can help you translate what's in your mind to the paper, to the final product. And not being too proud to ask, not being too proud to say, actually, that's not my strength at all. So could you help me with this? And you
Absolutely.
As you said, everything is collaborative. No one person does everything.
Yeah, it's like I think that the best things come out of a team effort, a collaborative effort, and a relinquishment of ego, like letting go of your ego and working with a person. I remember when I learned how to take critique in high school. I went to a performing arts high school in Alabama, but I was not in the performing art. I was actually a creative writing student. We had a wonderful curriculum where I essentially, like, we read prose, we read contemporary work, we read vignettes, like we read all sorts of things for high schoolers, like not just the dead white guys that we're told to read in American schools. And I remember, I was writing and I wasn't very confident in my craft. I wasn't very confident as an artist. And I had a lot of insecurities because I compare myself to the other students in my program who were winning awards and who had a better adjusted social life. Because for a while, until one of my best friends joined the program, I was like the only Black girl in my grade. I kind of had like, this teacher, and she was like the nicest German lady. She always wore orange and she had like big white hair. And I remember her critiquing, she's trying to, like, we're talking through one of my pieces of work and she's like, hey, like, this is something I noticed, this, you can maybe change this, you can maybe change that. But because I had all of these insecurities about my work, and because I was just like, so like I had the guard up in my ego, and, I was very like, I meant to do that.
Yeah.
That was on purpose. You just don't understand it. And so eventually she said, oh, okay, then I don't understand it. And then I was like, wait, what? Like, you're not gonna push back? And then she was like, no, if you think it's good, go for it. And then after that, I swear, I was like, no, I need to take this seriously. I need to correct myself. Because when you have that ego, when you're working with others, when people are sharing things, like I learned new things about my work from people just telling me how they perceived something that I did. And it's enlightening to me. I accept that maybe I might not agree with something that someone will add to my work or say about my work, but it's really good to kind of like have the open mind to kind of absorb that, because when you learn to kind of take that, you can see the big picture a lot better, and you can actually grow into a space that you never ever imagined that you would be thriving.
Yeah, the thing is, we are all learning all of the time. Doesn't matter how young or how old you are, there is a constant learning going on, and you just have to be open to that. So the other thing I always say to people is just listen to experts' advice. There is no point getting somebody who, whether it's your teacher or a consultant or whoever it is, if you choose not to listen, then you're the only one missing out. That doesn't mean that everything they say is right, because you can cherry pick the bits that you want to take away. But just listen, because you don't know everything.
You don't. You do not know everything. And I would like to, it's time to wrap up now, but I want to thank you so much for joining me. And I also want to give you a moment, because I understand that you're about to add a big splash of color to U.S. markets this year, because Lazoo is making its way to Nordstrom and Saks. Can you talk a bit more about that?
It's so totally mind-blowing to me that you can have an idea and you can embark on, a project or building a brand, and then that moment that you realize that someone somewhere else who's never met you, who knows nothing about you, is putting their hand in their pocket, their hard-earned cash, and paying for something that was a figment of my imagination. Mind-blowing.
So everybody go to your local Nordstrom.
We also ship worldwide from our own site, which is lisou.co.uk. So anything like that, we have the most gorgeous teams who, one in particular actually, because we all share it a little bit, but Alice is the main person who deals with customer services, and she is awesome. And I listen to her chit-chatting to people for hours on end, and giving advice, and any kind of query or anything like that. That is what we're here to do.
And also, if you don't see your size, there's also an option, right, to put in a custom order. So for, the curvy girlies, you know what I mean? You're not left out.
The slim, the curvy, the whoever you are, we will custom make things for you. Ring us. get in touch with us, email us at customer services, or call the gorgeous Alice and she will explain the whole thing, because my whole thing is I want to make what I make available for everyone.
Thank you so much for tuning in with me today, and thank you so much, Rene, for sharing your story. Please follow at Lisou London on Instagram. Rene also does her own, if you're interested in fashion and style especially, Rene has her own ongoing Instagram live series, which, you know, you speak to various stylists and you all talk about like clothes and everything. So please follow along.
How lucky am I?
Yeah. Like so lucky, and I'm so lucky, and we're all just so lucky to be here on the planet at the same time as each other.
I have to say thank you so much for having me, and I adore you, as you know. You're just fabulous. Your energy, your talent, just your whole attitude. Look at your lovely, gorgeous smile. I would only apologise for one thing, which is that the jet lag has seriously kicked in. So
I wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have known unless you had said it. You said it twice now.
Oh.
I wouldn't have known.
Recall.
I wouldn't have known. You need to put that. It's done. We don't know what jet lag is. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And please, again, follow at Lisou London to stay in touch with Rene's work. You can also shop the Lisou London brand in Nordstrom if you're in the US. So congratulations, Rene, and take care, y'all.
You too. Bye-bye, my love.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching. Follow along for more inspirational content.